This man could weigh the planets, he mapped the tides and tamed the light itself. And in the spring of 1720, he lost a fortune so vast it would have shamed a lord. This is the story of how the smartest man alive got swallowed by a bubble, and why 300 years later it keeps happening to the rest of us. To understand the fall, you have to understand the dream, and the dream was born from desperation. By 1711, Britain was drowning. Decades of war against France had buried the nation under a mountain of debt so vast that no one could see a way out. The government owed millions to thousands of people, and it could barely pay the interest. The country was, in plain terms, broke. Into that desperation stepped a company with a dazzling idea, the South Sea Company. Its offer was simple and seductive. Hand us your national debt, we'll take it off your books, and in return, give us a monopoly to trade with the gold and silver of Spanish America. Picture it, galleons heavy with silver, spices, sugar, the riches of a whole new world flowing back to London. There was only one wee problem: that trade barely existed. Spain still ruled those ports, and it had no intention of opening them. By treaty, Britain was allowed a single ship a year. The riches were a rumor. But the man behind the company, a ruthless director named John Blunt, understood something most honest men never do. A story doesn't have to be true to be worth money, it only has to be believed, and he was about to make all of London believe. In 1720, Blunt proposed his masterstroke. The company would swallow nearly the entire national debt, converting it into South Sea shares. And here was the trick, the dark genius of it. The higher the share price climbed, the fewer shares the company had to give away, so Blunt had every reason on earth to make that price soar. In January, a single share cost about £128. Then the machine began to turn. The company spread rumors of unimaginable profit, treaties about to be signed, mountains of silver about to sail. It lent people money to buy its own shares, so the buying would never stop. And it bribed the powerful without shame. Politicians, ministers, even the king's mistresses were handed shares for free, on the understanding they would sing the company's praises. When the men who run a country all profit from a lie, the lie becomes the truth, and the price began to fly. £300, £500, then £1,000. In a matter of months, the price had multiplied near eightfold. And all of London lost its mind. Dukes and washerwomen, poets and priests crowded into the narrow lanes of Exchange Alley, screaming to buy. They weren't investing, they were possessed. Nobody cared what the company actually did. They were buying on the simple certainty that a greater fool would pay more tomorrow. And where there is madness, there are men ready to feed on it. Copycat companies erupted overnight, dozens of them, each promising the moon. One proposed to build a wheel of perpetual motion, another to import a herd of jackasses from Spain, one to ensure masters against the thievery of their own servants. And the most infamous of all, so the story goes, raised money for, and I quote, an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. The founder collected his cash in a single morning and was never seen again. That was the temperature of the madness. Even Isaac Newton was in it. Master of the Royal Mint, the greatest mind of the age, he had put his money down like everyone else, and at first he was wise. He watched the frenzy, he sensed the danger, and he sold, walking away with a profit of around £7,000. A handsome fortune, he had escaped clean. And then he made the most human mistake there is. He watched his friends grow richer without him, day after day, the envy gnawing at him. Until the wisest man in England did the most foolish thing of all. He bought back in, near the very top. At the summit, the men who had built the whole machine, Blunt and his directors, quietly began to do the one thing they had told everyone else never to do. They sold. Then came an act of breathtaking greed that lit the fuse. To crush the copycat companies stealing their investors, the South Sea men pushed a law through Parliament, the Bubble Act, outlawing them. But when those smaller bubbles burst, the fear did not stay small, it spread, and frightened investors turned at last to the South Sea itself and asked the question no one had dared to ask: what is this company truly worth? The answer was terrifying: almost nothing. Once the smart money fled, the spell shattered. A whisper became a rush. The rush became a stampede. Everyone wanted out at once, and there was no one left to buy. A share worth £1,000 in the summer was worth 150 by the autumn. In a matter of weeks, the fortune of an entire nation simply vanished into the air. And the human wreckage was everywhere. Men who had been rich at breakfast were beggars by supper. Estates were sold, families were shattered. Some, unable to face the ruin, took their own lives. The despair reached into every corner of the land, from the palace to the poorhouse. And Isaac Newton, he lost around £20,000, the equivalent of several million today. The man who had measured the heavens had been broken by the madness of men. When the dust settled, the nation wanted blood. Parliament launched a furious inquiry, and what it found was rot, all the way to the top. The company's books had been cooked. The bribes were laid bare. The Chancellor of the Exchequer himself, John Aislabie, was found guilty of corruption and thrown into the Tower of London. The directors had their fortunes seized to repay the ruined. John Blunt, the architect of it all, was stripped of nearly everything he owned. And out of the wreckage rose a careful, cunning politician named Robert Walpole, who restored a measure of order, and in doing so became, in all but name, Britain's first Prime Minister. But here is the part that should stop ye cold. This was never a story about fools. The smartest man who ever lived stood in that crowd and was ruined alongside the washerwomen, which means the bubble was never, ever about intelligence. It was about us, our hope, our greed, our envy, our terror of watching others grow rich while we stand still, and those things do not change, not in 300 years, not ever. That is why this same story keeps being told. The Mississippi bubble in France, the very same year, the Wall Street crash of 1929, the dot-com mania, the crash of 2008, every crypto frenzy you have ever watched rise and fall. Every single one of them is the South Sea bubble wearing new clothes, the same greed, the same certainty that this time it is different. It never is. The South Sea taught us the oldest lesson in money. We just keep choosing to forget it. I'm the measure of treasure. If this story moved ye, then subscribe and I'll tell ye another. History is full of them and they all rhyme.